Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me on my newest town hall. Today, we're going to be talking about coping with addiction during the coronavirus quarantine. And of course, that's the main focus. How do you do it during the quarantine? But I also wanted to get in just a little bit at the end, how you deal with it when we're not in quarantine. Especially from a family member's perspective, or even the person that's going through it at the moment. So appreciate you joining me. Today my guest is Matt Null. He is with the Gaudenzia house. And I must say that when I reached out to them, they did not hesitate one bit to come on and talk about this and give advice and kind of help us work through that. So thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome.
If you could just give a kind of a brief introduction to what Gaudenzia House is and kind of your role there and how long you've been doing it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Matt Null, and I work for Gaudenzia. We are a drug and alcohol treatment provider. We actually have 180 different programs throughout Pennsylvania, Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Delaware. Even though we have a lot of different programs, it doesn't mean we're like a Walmart provider. Many of our programs are in small little towns where there might not be other resources. And so it's not like you're going to see major, huge complexes, but that gives individuals a lot of unique opportunities and specializing our programs to fit the needs of our clients. We offer the full continuum of care from inpatient, outpatient, withdrawal management. We even have some really unique programs for pregnant mothers or mothers with children because we saw there was a barrier that, hey, I need treatment, but I'm a mom and I have kids. I don't have anybody to take care of my kids. We say, bring them with you. Those are amazing programs that we have to offer. And a lot of our programs, we, have the opportunity for a person to stay into treatment for up to 6 months even. And that makes a major, major difference. One other thing that makes us stand out from others is that lack of insurance or funding is not a barrier for treatments. We will help find the funding for the person. And we don't want to deny anybody just because they don't have the funding to get into treatment. So we have a good network, partnerships with a lot of the state and local and county providers that we're able to make sure everybody gets in the treatments. So that's a little bit of what we do.
That's amazing. That's a lot of what you do. I mean, you do a lot.
Yeah.
And I like that you have so many different programs because just for the record, I do not have addiction issues. It does exist in my family.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that people who have addiction issues, their treatment is not a one size fits all. I would imagine what works for one person doesn't work for another person. And it must be, or is it, I guess, difficult to kind of match them with the treatment that will actually help them instead of just, oh, well, that didn't work. We're going to, I give up kind of thing.
That you hit the nail on the head. You're right. There is no one silver bullet that's going to fix everyone or one pathway that works for everybody. It's very individualized, and we really have to get down to that core reason of what's going on in that person inside that's going to help them overcome their addiction, and that's a lifelong process. So we do have many different opportunities and programs because there's not a cookie cutter pathway for everyone. We allow our clinical team to sit down, get to know the person, and come up with a good game plan for them. With the opioid epidemic, we see a lot of wanting to create one pathway, or we want that silver bullet that's going to help everyone. And that's just not feasible. It's not
Right.
perfect. And where the public and okay, what's the best way? Let's put everybody in that track. That's not correct. And we also see that people going to treatment, they're not always successful the first time. Rarely are they successful the first time. However, that wasn't poor time spent, right? They're still going to learn from those experiences, and that's the building blocks. and then they might go out and try it and unfortunately relapse, which is not good. But now we have a little bit of safety net, and let's build off of that. So I'm not saying that it's acceptable, but also in that process, we're figuring out what you just said is what does work for them,
Yeah.
and so that way that person understands, well, I tried this, but I need this. So
Right.
you're right. And Gaudenzia does offer a lot of different pathways for that.
And have you been seeing, so obviously, one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because I was just imagining how difficult it must be for people who are currently addicted um, to go through this lockdown and this quarantine. I mean, on any given day, I'm sure it's a difficult path to travel. And with the stress and everything and the lockdown, I can't imagine how difficult it is on their end. So how can people who are currently using get help? Like, let's say they want to get help right now. We've got the social distancing, we've got the stay inside your house. What are their options if they want help?
So yes, there's a lot of different options. One, so they can go to DDAP, or Department of Drug and Alcohol, or of Pennsylvania website, and there's an 800 number there that they can call. They can also go right on to gaudenzia.org, and we have 3 buttons on there. I need help, my client needs help, or my loved one needs help, and they can fill out those buttons. It asks for some information. Please, if you do that, make sure you put your phone number and email, because sometimes I get them and I have no way to reach out to the person. But you fill out that form, and literally those in central Pennsylvania, it comes right to me. And that's an easy pathway. And then I can talk with you, get more information, and get that process started. In Pennsylvania, every county has an SCA, or a single county authority. And with that, they have a drug and alcohol division or component. And that's so locally, you can always reach out to your local SCA or single county authority for some pathways of what's there locally as well.
Okay. And so let's say they call and they get a hold of you or somebody else in a different county. What's the next step? Like, what can they expect? Would they
Right.
have to deal with it, in their own house, or is the social
Right.
distancing kind of thing waived for those situations?
That's a great question, because I think a lot of people, they're not sure what is this gonna look like, and everything. So when I get a phone call, the first thing I'm basically determining is, does a person need detox or not? A person that needs detox is going to be using large amounts of alcohol, which is extremely common right now, especially with COVID-19. They're
Mhm.
using heroin, fentanyl, any of the opioids. And so with that, we want to make sure that the person gets medical attention right off the bat. Because if someone is using a lot of alcohol and they should just stop, there can be a lot of medical complications, seizures. They can actually die from that. So there is pretty quick and easy pathway to get that person right into detox, because there's some medical concern. If a person does not need detox, then typically what we do is a level of care assessment, where that person is going to sit down with, or via Zoom,
Yeah.
and for about an hour, we get to know you and do a biopsychosocial. So understanding how is the potential, because we're not sure if it's an addiction yet, affecting the person's life in every way, shape, and form. Your body, how's it affecting your body, how's it affecting your state of mind, but also how's it affecting your relationships, because that's a big telltale sign of, is this abuse, is it addiction, and then there, our clinical team can get to know you and understand what is going to be the best next step for you. So that's why it's called a level of care assessment, to see what level of care um, you qualify for. And this is also kind of like that doctor's note to go to the payer or your insurance and saying, yes, this person needs this level of care. If I need shoulder surgery, I might first have to try physical therapy and a shot before they do surgery. But if my doctor says, no, his shoulder's really messed up, he needs surgery, that's what this documentation is able to do as well.
Okay.
So it's not a scary process. And I would like people to know is you're not like we don't force you in anything. This is a mutual thing that we work on together with you. You still have client choice. You can decide. Now we're going to help use our experience and what we think is going to be best. But just because you pick up the phone call, a van's not going to drive up to your house and these big guys run out and like grab you and like, you're going for 9 months and you're never coming. No, that's not how it works. It's okay. I know it's scary.
Yeah.
And there's some anxiety, but we're going to help you get through it.
Have you been seeing a lot of overdoses right now during the quarantine? Has the overdose rate gone up versus, this period last year when things were quote unquote normal? Um,
Yeah. In some counties, it's doubled, if not tripled.
wow.
So it has drastically gone up. I sit on a lot of committees and task forces and town halls and where we've been really working with the opioid epidemic I've been on those for years. And it was really good. And we saw kind of, the numbers really starting to go down, especially in the last year. Not that it was fixed or anything like that, but the overdose numbers, because I think a lot of things were in place with Narcan and warm handoff, awareness, but also when the perceived risk of a drug goes down, usage goes up.
Hmm.
Risk of marijuana right now is like zilcho, so we see the use go way up. The perceived risk of fentanyl and heroin is very high, so use goes down. So we did see some of that happening too. But since COVID has come on, it has just skyrocketed. Counties that we saw really their numbers going down now just shooting through the roof, and this is a major concern, because before COVID-19, the biggest health concern, at least in Pennsylvania, most of the nation, was the opioid epidemic, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the problem didn't stop, and the drug market didn't go on quarantine, and now we're adding all these major stressors and problems, and my landlord can't kick me out. So like all those motivating factors to get people into treatment disappeared as well.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very scary time for people abusing drugs and alcohol.
Do you think that the overdose rate has increased so drastically because of the stress of the situation, or do you think it's because of the ability, and correct me if I say anything wrong, I don't,
Sure.
it's not my intention, right? I'm
Right.
just asking, I think what normal, regular people who don't have the experience you do. Is it because of the stress, or is it because that they're home alone, they have the ability to kind of do it without anybody seeing them do it or checking in on them? Like, you never know when mom's going to drop by, but now you're pretty sure she's not going to. What do you think is behind the overdoses at the moment?
It's like this perfect storm, unfortunately. So you have financial stresses on some people. Anytime you add stress, we all cope with it differently, right? And stress is a major component of someone relapsing or turning to drugs and alcohol. So you have financial stress. Your kids are home, running around. That's a stressful thing.
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to find food? Am I going to be able to put food on my kid's plate? So you have that whole component of all these stressors, but then you also have the loneliness or isolation, or a lot of organizations that were safeguards in this aren't fully up and running, if that's probation or recovery groups, AA and NA doing things online. Like I said earlier, my landlord can't evict me. I just now got a $1,200 check from the government, which could be a good thing, but unfortunately that buys a lot of heroin, right? We see, Saturday I drove by my local beer distributor. You couldn't find a parking spot in that whole place, right? Boredom is a huge concern when it comes to someone who's actively using or in recovery. When our board, Right now, I'm getting a massive amount of calls from family members trying to get a loved one into treatment
Mhm.
because they are seeing some of those behaviors, which maybe we'll talk a little bit later. So everyone is unique and different. Everybody's in a different situation. All those things, plus that list really goes on, all adds to the complexity of this. Um, Anxiety and depression are probably our two biggest mental health concerns when it comes to someone turning to drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
Well, with anxiety of, can I go out of my house and I have to wear this mask? And oh my goodness, I mean, that can go through the roof. And being alone and lonely with both of those, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so again, it's all those factors rolled up. Everybody's a little bit unique and different, but it is definitely playing an impact on these communities.
And I think it's important too to remember that there are all types of different faces of addiction.
Right.
It's not um it's not just what you might see like in the movies, um, but it's, it's parents, it's working adults, it, you know, it,
Everyone.
it's every exactly. And so it's kind of hard, when you talk about what's prompting it. I can see where you're coming from. It's like you name it, and it can be contributing because everybody has their own stressors. And I can't imagine how difficult that is then on your end to treat when everybody has their own pressure point,
Right.
it's got to be really difficult. And I would imagine that sometimes they don't even know what their own pressure point is, or do they?
Yes. No, some people do, and I'll get a call. Like the other day, I had one. She knew everything. I was like, "You're amazing!" Like she's like, "I know I need this. I know this is going on, and here I am getting help." And I'm like, if only every one of my calls were like that, it would be wonderful. Other people, they don't get it at all, and when they do, it's a beautiful thing. Um, in treatment, what we do is we help people throw up. Let me explain that, okay? But when someone throws up, it is a beautiful thing. So we all could go through different emotions and things like that, but typically as humans, we don't like that feeling. So we push them down, we put them back up, right? And I push them down and I push them down. And drugs and alcohol, they take away some of those feelings, right? So that's a wonderful escape, but it's not the solution. So what we do is we help people get those emotions out. I'll give you one example that I commonly use. I used to work with adolescents in treatments, and one night we had a meeting, about 30 adolescent boys, and one of the boys raised his hand and he said, "Hey, I have an announcement. There's something that I want to come out," and he announced that he was gay. Now I was like, I was new into this field and I was like, oh my goodness, what are these other 30 boys going to now do? Like, we're in for a crazy night. And to my surprise, what the other kids was, they gave him a hug.
Oh,
Proud of you, man. That took a lot of courage to say that. I love you. And I was like, what? Like, this is amazing.
yeah.
That kid felt like he was on top of the world because he needed to get that out.
Right.
So he threw up, right? But the neat thing is, what happened to all the other kids once he threw up? They started throwing up too. Judgmental area that they felt safe. And really, that's what we try to do, is peel off those layers and get down there. And that's where one-on-one inpatient treatment and outpatient treatment, but seeing someone, we can work on all those things. There's a big medical treatment, which is a tool, a component, but no medication can help you throw up like that.
Yeah.
So it is a really, really neat thing if you can get there. And when it happens, like I said, it's beautiful. It's cool.
Well, you had mentioned a little earlier, you briefly touched on the family side of things. So if you have an addicted person quarantined with you right now in the house,
Right.
um, what can they do to help? And then also on the flip side of that, if you're a family member and you have an addicted person living in a different house,
Right.
What are your options? How can family members on both sides of that coin step up and help?
Right. So I think my line that I always go with is, this is not a wheel you have to reinvent and not a road to go down alone. So keep those two things in mind. So with that, the family needs to get help sometimes first, and to understand and be given the tools to help a loved one. This is a family disease, and the family has to heal and get help together. Um, the amount of shame and guilt on your loved one is through the roof. They're never ever going to show it, okay? But it is very, very heavy and very there. So how can you do this to your mom and your dad, and to your kids? And if we add to that shame and guilt, typically it's just going to blow up more. It's not going to really work at all, because that's what they're using the drugs to escape from. They are phenomenal at manipulating. They can sell ice to an Eskimo. They convince you that the sky is purple. Like, they're really, really good at that. They're going to use anger and aggression to try to get you to back off, right? So we might approach it, and they're going to threaten to kill themselves, to hurt themselves. How can you do this to me? You don't love me. I'm fine. I got this. And going to get very angry at you. And they're always going to take the path of least resistance. So if dad's coming down on me about this, well, I'm going to go to mom. But if mom shuts off my bank account, well, I'm going to go to my sister. So the entire family has to get on the exact same page and come up with a game plan. How do we do that? You need to get help yourself. So reaching out to Al-Anon meetings, and to attend several, if that is not right now in person, but online. But go to a bunch of different ones, because some people will go to one and be like, I really didn't feel like I fit in. Well, guess what? Go to another one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of great resources out there, community groups, and I have in my back pocket a whole bunch of moms in that I might talk to a family, a mother, and give some advice, and hopefully it's pretty good advice. But sometimes just talking mom to mom makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
So connecting with other people who have been down this road before is the number one thing. So 2 call outs right now on this is, if you are one of those moms that can be reached out, or dads, or whoever, we need you, right? But if you are suffering from a loved one with SUD or substance abuse disorder, let's get you connected to some of those community groups and other people. And so that you're given those tools, because Matt, you're saying, hey, you want to use shame and guilt, and this is what they're going to do. Okay, how should I handle that? Well,
Right.
that's a 2-hour episode on here to do that.
Yeah.
But we want to help you and guide you and walk you through that, so you can almost have your own intervention, or there's things that we can do. And ultimately, in the end, is if the person is not uncomfortable, they're not going to go into any change. If you are making them comfortable by supplying them with money, with food, with shelter,
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason for them to change at all. Now, does any loved one want to see, their son or daughter or dad sleeping out on a park bench? No. But there sometimes comes that component, kicks in there. We still love them. We're going to help you, but we need to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
To determine what X, Y, and Z is, reach out for help. There's no shame and guilt on your part. We're all in this, okay? There's no boundaries. So reach out and ask a professional for some guidance.
And that was going to be my next question. Is it possible to help someone who hasn't reached their rock bottom yet? Because let's just leave it at that. Is it possible?
Right. Yes, it is. Because you're always building upon that. If someone reaches out to me and maybe they're just contemplating or pre-contemplating that I need help, me just addressing it, okay, is already planting that seed. And we never go right to that full out, kick them out of the house, change your locks, call probation on them, do all those extreme things. There's always a progression, because we want to give them that opportunity as well, because not everybody needs to. Sometimes there are external motivators. For example, you committed a crime and now the judge is saying you have to go to treatment. Well, if they don't want to be in treatment, is that pointless? No, because sometimes we can get them into an environment where there are no drugs or alcohol, and their brain begins to heal, and they start to come out of that fog, and all of a sudden be like, all right, well, I really didn't want this,
Hmm.
but I kind of do now.
Yeah.
And when we can see that, take place. Can you absolutely force a person in from a loved one thing? No. And I get that call a lot. Oh, my loved one has to go. Can't you do something? Can't you come pick them? No, we
Yeah.
can't. Um, so it is a tough challenge. Everyone's unique and different, and that's why understanding what's going on. If someone calls me and says, hey, I think I might need some help, the first comment that I say is, how are you doing? Are you
Mm.
doing okay? And that kind of like, I, I think that catches them off guard. And the
Yeah.
second thing I typically say is, I'm proud of you. Just because picking up that phone call, takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And hopefully utilizing that to then get them just to, okay, you're in a safe place now, you can talk,
Yeah.
and we go from there.
Yeah, and addiction comes in all different forms, and it's not easy. I could stand to lose a good 30 pounds. I know I need to do it. I know my health is not as good if I had, was carrying less weight, but yet it's difficult to do, to get your mind around. So I can see how, addiction to chemicals, would be just as difficult. And there's a try again, try again, try again kind of thing. But just because you fail, tomorrow is a whole new day.
Hmm.
And even if you fail, and you do take that drink or you do have that whoopie pie, the second you're done, you can start over, right? It's never failure is never permanent, in other
That's right.
words. Yeah.
And you're always building upon those experiences. If someone did relapse, well, what made you relapse?
Yeah.
And how could we have caught this earlier? Because typically relapse doesn't happen right when the person takes the drug or drink. It happens days, weeks before they actually take that. So to give someone the tools to recognize, who, okay, I just lost my job, or there's a stressor, I had a fight with a loved one, whatever it might be, that might result into that. Let's catch that earlier and have those safeguards. And that's the difficulty right now with COVID-19, is a lot of those safeguards aren't in place. And it's easy to be like, oh, just throw up my hands, be like, oh, I can't do this. But getting to the meetings, having a sponsor, really working that. And we often will say that recovery doesn't happen in treatment. In treatment, we're just setting the fundamentals, but it's living that lifelong experience every day. That's what is recovery, to the point where you're giving back to others as well.
And what about those people who are sober at the moment,
Yeah.
and dealing with it? Because I listen to a certain radio show, and they're doing it by Zoom, and they were kind of catching up with each other, and a few of them were saying how much they're drinking right now because they're at home, they're stressed out over the virus, and those are people who don't have an issue with it. And
Right.
so, if you have an issue with it, how can you stay sober right now? Especially when you can't get in your car and go to the in-person meetings or
Right.
whatever it is that works for you.
It is very tough. It is very challenging right now. There are a lot of programs, meetings that are online. Um, and some people are liking that, because it's just more convenient, but you don't get that human feel,
Mhm.
and sometimes we need a hug, and in the treatment community, and maybe I'm going off the task, but I can always tell when somebody works in the drug and alcohol recovery field, because we hug each other. That's just naturally what we do in this field and in the recovery community, is we give hugs, because when someone needs a hug, you give them a hug.
Yeah.
We can't hug right now. you
Nope.
know? And even though it seems like a small thing, it doesn't mean that we haven't stopped caring. So, working your program, if you are, you know, recovery happens with one person helping another person. That's what it's all about. But guess what? Both of them get help in that process. So if you are, in recovery community, can you reach out to somebody else, at least one person every day? And hopefully that person reaches out to someone as well. And if you need help, reach out. And if you can help someone, reach out, and just really communicating. We do have some technology, but it is difficult right now with a lot of the in-person meetings. Knowing your triggers, having your sponsor, having your safeguards. If you are a family member and you have a loved one that is in recovery, check in with them. Check in with them often. Um, and also making sure that you're getting what you need as a family member, as well. And it's tough right now. Everyone this weekend was pretty nice outside, and as I look around my backyard, I see many neighbors out there grilling and having beers and things like that. It's a challenging time, but if there's one community that knows how to get through tough times, it's the recovery community. And we need everybody, the millions of people that live a life of recovery. We need you right now in so many ways. So we respect everyone's anonymity, but we need you to reach out and show how it's done, and it does happen.
Yeah. And if you are at home and you're living with an addicted person, like I've experienced addicted people getting very angry and aggressive when they're addicted. So if you're in a home with someone like that, how can you diffuse that situation as it's happening, so that it doesn't turn into a domestic violence situation, or
Right.
if there's kids in the house or animals in the house, so that people don't get hurt and they don't get hurt.
Right.
How can you diffuse that situation as it's happening?
Well, we all heard of fight, flight, or freeze, right? So if someone comes aggressively at me, typically I'm going to scream and yell right back or fight back. Well, that's not a healthy thing, and guaranteed you're never going to win. You are with someone with substance abuse disorder, you are not going to win. Okay. Yeah. The other thing is flight, right? Is to run away or freeze and not deal with it at all. And unfortunately, that denial is very, very common for loved ones. Okay, look, I'm not going to fight with them. That's just maintain. We're just maintaining right now. He's not breaking anything. I know he's here, so he's at least safe. But denying it and not approaching it, that's not a good thing. So fight, fight, or flee. Wait, well, that doesn't give us any solution. Well, there is another one, and that is to be educated and approach it, but not in a flight situation or not a freeze one. And one of the best tools that I like to recommend to people is motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a way that you can sit down with the person and speak with them and hopefully get them to calm down and realize, with some de-escalation skills in there as well, and for them to come up with, like, well, why are you so angry right now? How are you feeling? Well, what made you feel that way? Do you think that you could have done something differently? And so you're asking them questions, and they're coming up with the solution. You're just kind of like guiding them, through that process. I know some of my loved ones, they hate when I do it to them. Just angry about the dishes. Well, why are you so angry about the dishes right now? How does that make you feel? So we can joke around with it, but it's a motivational interviewing, and you can go online and you can learn a lot about that. But it's a way to give you a tool to talk with that person and how to de-escalate them a little bit, and for them to realize and come to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe I do need some help, and then to move forward from that. It's tough, but again, remember, it's not something you have to reinvent, and it's nothing to go down alone. So reach out for help to give you even more tools in that situation, because it's scary.
Yeah, it is. And it's very aggravating when they're turning it on you, and
Right.
it's not them, it's the substance talking, but still it's like, you know, it's difficult to not let your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah,
They're presenting that to you. It's like, really? Like, so it is very difficult.
right. Yeah, because if they can get your emotions going, they won.
Yeah.
Like that's what they're tactic. Because in their addictive brain, the frontal lobe right here, right, that's what controls forward thinking, consequences, right from wrong. Well, as a person's addiction proceeds, that section shuts down, and we're just come up with the lizard brain, which is kind of like the core part of our brain, which is in survival mode. And so I'll get asked, "Hey, Matt, this woman is pregnant and she has kids. Why can't she just stop using meth?" That's a no-brainer, right? Like, isn't that more? You have to understand what's going on, the biology and the chemistry of what's going on with that brain and how things are shut off and rebuilding and things like that. And even just to understand the biology, like an alcoholic, when they drink alcohol, it goes in their stomach. And for me, after this interview, if I go and have beer, I turn on the couch, I turn on Impractical Jokers, and I fall asleep. It makes me sleepy. But into someone um, else, their body can break down that alcohol into an acetate, which gives them a whole different feeling and experience on alcohol than what I get. Right? This comes from your DNA. You can't control that, so it's a very, very hereditary. But just understanding the biology and the chemistry. Oh, so I'm not a bad person? No, you're not. This is just how your body takes that chemical and converts it into something else, and you get this reaction from it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just as someone suffering from celiac disease who can't process gluten, well, they have the same stomach and small intestine as I do. Why can't their body process gluten, but I can eat all the bread and noodles I want, right? It's based on their DNA. And so we have to learn how to live a different lifestyle when you have that DNA.
Yeah. And so you can really get through to someone when they're um, addicted. If you have an alcoholic, for instance, who's drunk, and can they really process what you're saying? Is it something they'll remember in the morning?
No.
I didn't think so.
um,
Yeah.
and that's where we take baby steps. But once we can get them into treatment and give them some time,
Yeah.
and when you can see that, you can like literally see the brain healing almost. You can't see their brain, but just the color of their skin, their complexion, how they're talking. You can see life come in. And if someone wasn't just taking care of their body and getting healthy meals,
Yeah.
um, and sometimes a loved one person goes in treatment, you might not see them right away for some time, and then they come in, they're like, oh my goodness, you look so different. Well, yeah, because they're eating and they're being healthy, and that brain starts to change, and that brain change really doesn't happen for about 90 days. But unfortunately, a lot of people only go into treatment for 21 days, 28 days, 30 days, but once we can get that process going, you're right, it's that first step. But if we can use some rationality and some science, to get them to recognize that, hey, I do have a substance abuse disorder, and I need some help. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
It's not. And yeah, it's really not. It's very challenging, to say the least. So, Brad, do we have any comments on Facebook that we haven't touched on? You're muted. There you
I think the biggest stress while we wait for Brad right now is like where to get a haircut. Like that's gonna drive me
go.
like,
I
I
saw a thing about well, my hair is getting really long, and I said to my husband, "You could just cut like 3 inches off, right?" And then I thought, "Yeah, I don't think I want to go down that road."
right, right.
All right. So,
No,
well,
no questions from this end,
okay.
but they've all been answered by your discussion. That's been great.
Thank you. Does anybody else, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself, or down at the bottom, there's a chat box. See if we have any questions we haven't answered.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
What is your success rate with helping people with addiction?
That's a really, really hard number to come up with for a lot of different reasons. And not to avoid the question at all, but when someone goes through treatment, they would, hopefully we can get them through the whole continuum of care and we can track them in that process. But then they'll eventually go home. Now, a common recommendation is change your cell phone number, change your email, because we need to get away from people, places, things. We would like that current information for the clients so we can follow up with them and see, how they are doing and checking in and things like that. But that's very, very difficult to do so. And when you ask what is your success rate, I think we also have to define what is your success rate at the first time a person tries to get help, whatever that might look at, to maybe a second time or a third pathway. I don't want to say times, but pathways or other things as well. Now, one thing uniquely that I can share about is at Gaudenzia, what we do is we have completion. So if someone completes one of our programs, and that's about 65% of our populations, actually, I think even a little bit higher than that, that will complete our program. And that's much higher than the national average of completions. So that's a really good thing. So that's someone completing the recommended clinical determined pathway and what they do. So whenever someone completes, we have a big celebration, and a party and things like that. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to live a life of recovery, because there's a lot of work to do outside. But so, with completion rate, I'd say about 65% of successful completions. Now, one thing that we uniquely do is we also have a graduations process. So if a person completes one of our programs, and then they will fill out an application about at least a year later, it can't be shorter than that, and where they document, I have a home group, I don't owe anybody money, I have no legal things, here's what's going on in my life. We review that, and as all the directors, we actually vote yay or nay. That doesn't mean they get to be a graduate yet. They then actually have to sit down and do an interview with a whole group of people, community members, where we really interview them and see, hey, are you living a life of recovery and doing what you're supposed to be doing? And then we'll vote, and that person is able to become a Gaudenzia graduate, which is kind of like the Eagle Boy Scout of treatment, which I say. We have a huge graduation ceremony where all the family members come, and literally all the graduates go across the stage. They get to say some thank yous and some words. It's a really, really neat thing. But just in the central region, every year we will graduate about 50 to 75% of people, or 50 to 75 people through the graduation process. And they then often will go turn to the field for actually for some employment opportunities as well. So that's a unique thing. So, and also in your question, success rate as far as like inpatient, outpatient, MAT with all the different pathways is difficult. I will say though, most people don't go through one treatment and get it. That does not happen. Does that mean that treatment doesn't work? No, I don't think so. This is a major brain disease, and we know that 90 days before even that brain starts to heal. And just because someone goes into one treatment and it doesn't work doesn't mean that was a failure. We set some things, in place. That was the building blocks. Maybe they went home, they tried things, and maybe they do relapse, which unfortunately can result in death. We don't want that. But that's a learning experience. Okay, well, I learned something, I need to get back in, and we're going to build upon that. But in the end, when we take a cross look at the millions and millions of people that are living a life of recovery, it is an amazing thing. It can happen. It's just not an easy thing to take place. So Kathy, I don't know if I avoided your question or if that's out at all.
No, you answered. I've always heard such great things about your organization, and I don't know, I put it up there pretty high with
Thank you.
ones that I've heard of. And I just wondered, a lot of these other places brag about their success rates. And I'm like you, I don't see how that is absolutely possible, because you have different personalities doing different things. So
Yeah. If any treatment facility says that they have this like phenomenal success rate, I
Right.
really question that.
Right.
Because that's unfortunately the nature of the beast. And right now, we get a lot of pressure. Like they want like this magic silver bullet. Well, can't you just give them all this pill or do this or do that, and everybody's gonna fix everybody? No, everybody's a little bit different. So
Right.
there is not that one magic pathway. You treat this by treating everyone as an individual and dealing with their individual needs and concerns and with empathy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Let me see. We do have somebody on the phone. I don't know if he's able to unmute himself. Let me just double check, see if he has any. Bill, did you have any questions or
Well,
comments?
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have 35 years of recovery.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And a little bit of Kathy's question is one of mine. I was fortunate enough to go through this many years ago, and I went through a place in Georgia where they were one of the first first centers that really emphasized the disease aspect of it. And you said something that really triggered with me was the first day I was there, the guy that ran the place introduced himself. I talked to him, and he said, the first thing you have to learn is you're not a bad person trying to get good. You're a sick person trying to get well.
That's right.
and that made a big difference. And it was very family. It was very involved with my wife. It was very involved, it was a 3-month, it was a impaired physicians program, even though I'm not a physician. And it had, and they kept track of it like a 3-month, 6-month type recidivism rates and so forth. And I've called lots of places and they say, well, we don't keep track. Well, I understand your position on that. But at the same time, I look at a lot of these some places, and yours doesn't sound that way at all, as detox centers more than recovery centers. And that's always something I question, particularly from an insurance standpoint. From your position, what you've said today is I'm very impressed. And actually, I'd like to talk to you again after this sometime, because I always like to be involved. I'm not the world's biggest advocate for all 12-step aspects. I'm more, I go to therapy and have therapists and big and, but that type of thing. But I would I'm new to Harrisburg.
Okay.
And I got to meet Patty and some things I know Brad for years and a little bit of politics, but I'm always looking for getting connected into the recovery community. And I know my son also is interested in it, even though he's not one who has the addiction thing. And I really appreciate, Patty doing this and you doing this, because I've heard a lot that I'm not real crazy about sometimes, and you've been outstanding. I'm a big advocate for I'm a big fan of Johann Hari and a number of other aspects, and but you sound like an incredibly sharp guy with an incredibly good program.
Thank you.
So I really want to connect up with you sometime later, so I can. And if there's any opportunities for me to get involved, I'm always interested.
I'd love to help you, and it sounds like you are friends with Patty, or you have some connection that Patty can definitely get you my information.
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah.
And after this, for anybody that's going to be watching this now or later, we'll make sure we post my email and my phone number. If somebody's watching this and they need to talk to me about a loved one or themselves, that's what I'm here for. So we'll actually put my cell phone number up, and people can reach directly right with me. And if anybody forgets that, they can always go to gaudenzia.org. Click on one of those 3 buttons, and literally if you put in a zip code from any place in central Pennsylvania, that will come to me personally, and I can get back to you.
That's amazing.
Awesome. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that, and I look forward to talking to you. And we'll definitely keep you busy, and we'll keep you connected.
Okay.
Yeah, congratulations for your clean time. That's amazing.
Thank you very much.
And this is a good time to kind of give everybody the resources. And I will put those in the comments under the video so that the two things will live together. But if someone is struggling right now with addiction and they need help, what phone number should they call to get the help that they need, or who should they contact?
So a couple of things, like they can go to DDAP website, and right there is, and I should, and this is live, and I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Okay. No, that's okay.
We will definitely put that one up there,
Yeah.
because anywhere they can use that number.
Okay.
If you're in a Central Pennsylvania number, they can call 717-497-7402, and that will come directly to me. You can also call your county drug and alcohol commission. And we can actually maybe post some of those numbers up as well. But if you just, like, if you're from Lancaster County, type in Lancaster County drug and alcohol, typically your local drug and alcohol commission is going to come up too. Now, for some of them, they're still working from home, and there's some challenges there, as well. Going to the internet and doing research is probably the worst thing that you can do, because it's like, a lot of sites are hijacked, or you'll click on one thing, but it takes you to a program down in Florida. There's a lot of unethical things going on right there. So that's why we try to get you to someone reputable. If there's a local provider in your area too, reach out to them. This is not Coke and Pepsi. We just want you to get help. I don't care where you go, what program. Obviously, I'm going to help guide you to ones that I would send my own loved one to. But we're always sharing, like, if you reach out to me, but my program's not the best fit for you, but I know another provider is, let's get you to them, right? That's what it's all about, is helping people.
What about 911? Is that an acceptable use of 911?
You can, if it's an emergency situation, and sometimes that will actually get diverted over to a drug and alcohol. One challenge right now is before emergency rooms. Someone might be struggling, have a problem, a medical concern, or an overdose, and they would get to the emergency room. Because of COVID, people aren't going there. And so there's a pathway that used to be a good safeguard, right? You could always kind of go in there, then they would contact us. And if anyone would overdose, we have a warm handoff program which is going to meet the client and the loved one in the hospital, sit down with them and say, hey, how about let's get you into treatment? And then they will be with that person literally until our van shows up to come get them. That's one thing, because of COVID, is not up and running as well. You're still able to call there. You still can go in there. Obviously, if it's a medical condition, we want to, yes, call 911, or contact your emergency room, or go in there if there's any type of medical complication going on at all.
Okay. And what about family? Is there a hotline that is there like a national hotline or a central PA hotline for family members?
Yep. You can go on to Al-Anon, the Al-Anon website, and there you can see where all the meetings are locally, those that are online. That's normally the really, really good starting group. Also, contacting your local SCA, or Single County Authority, your Drug and Alcohol Commission. They are going to have a whole list of resources for you as well. So that's a good place to go to, because they're going to know what community groups are going on. There's a BALM program, which stands for Be a Living Mirror. They do a lot of family coaching, which is a very, very good program. There's a lot of other smaller community groups as well. In York County, we have Not One More. They do some phenomenal family working down there. So you can check out Not One More as an organization. But each community, you'll see, definitely has a network. But reaching out to your county is a good way to get connected to them. Or, like our caller, if you'd like to be more involved, you can reach out to those groups as well. Most of them will have a task force dealing with all this, which is basically an opportunity for everybody to get at a table together, from prevention to treatment to halfway houses to support groups. But the recovery community is amazing. There's a lot of events and things that used to go on, which unfortunately can't right now, but September is really busy being Recovery Month, of all kinds of baseball games and 5Ks and walks.
It's 12 o'clock.
And things
Sorry,
like
that was my computer.
I was like, what was that?
My computer tells me what time it is. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So,
Yeah.
and we can make that list for you and help you so it's posted for everyone, so it's easy for them, because the last thing you want is complexity, you know, when you're
Right.
trying to get someone help.
And finally, how can people help you, help Gaudenzia House? Can they donate money to you? Can people volunteer there? And if they can, do they have to be from, do they have to have experienced addiction on one side of the coin or the other to volunteer? Or, you know, how can they help you?
One way is through donation. We are nonprofits. A lot of our clients need even some simple, in a lot of our programs, we have like a clothing bank for them if they come in with absolutely nothing. Not everybody's in that situation. We do take donations for sure. Any little bit helps a lot. And even if that's like some of our little kiddos in our mothers and children's programs, getting birthday gifts and things like that, you can go right on to gaudenzia.org. And there is a whole section on there about if someone would like to donate items, or if that's a monetary donation. We really, really appreciate that. And that helps us a massive amount. We do have some volunteers that might come into our programs who want to be a speaker, who have lived life experiences, and they're going to help out that way. But if you have like a hobby or a skill or a trait that this, maybe you like pottery or painting, to even volunteer those times to come in and teach like a painting class or something like that, there you don't have to have any lived experience. You know, if you just want to give back and help people, hobbies are a huge component of someone's recovery, because remember I said boredom is a major problem. Well, we need to, if 8 hours of the day, 12 hours a day used to be me looking for drugs, finding drugs, going for drugs, using drugs, if I pull that out of my day, I got to put something healthy in there. So if you have some healthy skills that you can help teach, our clients, that's an opportunity. But I think the biggest thing is just recognizing that treatment is up and running. We have not shut down. We're taking all the safeguards and precautions that needed to keep our staff safe and our clients safe. And we're doing a pretty good job with that. But we're up and running. There is help out there for you. And I always kind of say this just for the general population. If you your next door neighbor had cancer, right? How fast would you run over a lasagna to that family?
Yeah.
You do that pretty quickly, right?
Exactly.
If you knew your next door neighbor's son is a heroin addict, would you run over a lasagna, or would you treat that family a little bit differently? That family needs you as well. And breaking down that stigma, that's what's going to help, and because one day that family is struggling, but guess what? Soon they're going to be the hero. They're going to help you.
Yeah.
If you have a family member, so we need to have empathy, and we need to have compassion for those families, because they're really, really going through a tough time, and they feel isolated. And we need to talk about this. It hits almost every family out there in some way, shape, or form, but it's still this dark, hidden secret that we don't like to be out about our family. Well, that needs to end, because if we want to make a change on that, we need to help each other. We need to talk about it.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect way to end it. That's absolutely. Compassion fixes so many things, and reaching out to your neighbor fixes so many things. This whole tribalism and, worrying about yourself and nobody else, that's got to end. It hasn't gotten us anywhere. And we need to go back to understanding that we're all the same on a basic level, and just start acting accordingly, I think. So thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate you joining me. And we'll put all those links in the comments so that people can know where to look and reach out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I hope this was good.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep. Take care.
You too.